They say money changes people, but for Marcus Thorne, it just revealed the monster he always was. It was Christmas Eve, the one night of the year meant for family and forgiveness. But in a penthouse, overlooking the freezing city streets, there was no warmth, only a brutal betrayal. A pregnant wife, cast out into the snow with nothing but the clothes on her back, a billionaire husband who thought he was untouchable, and a mysterious man in a Santa suit ringing a bell on the corner, watching it all unfold. Marcus thought he was discarding trash. He didn't realize he was mocking the most powerful man in the city, his own father-in-law. You are not going to believe how this karma hits. The panoramic windows of the penthouse suite at the top of the obsidian tower offered a view of the city that most people would kill for. Down below, New York was a grid of glittering lights, dusted with the fresh, relentless snow of Christmas Eve. Inside, the air smelled of expensive pine, scotch, and the distinct metallic scent of indifference. Elena Thorne sat on the edge of the velvet beige sofa, her hand resting protectively over her 7-month baby bump. She was 24, with hair the color of roasted chestnuts and eyes that usually sparkled, but tonight they were dull with anxiety. She had spent 3 hours preparing dinner, a roast duck with cherry glaze, Marcus's favorite, but the food sat cold and untouched on the mahogany dining table. The only sound in the room was the rhythmic tapping of a finger against glass. Marcus Thorne, 32, a man whose tech empire was currently valued in the high 9 figures, stood by the window. He was handsome in a sharp, predatory way. His jaw was square, his suit was a bespoke charcoal Armani, and his eyes were as cold as the glass he was leaning against. "Elena," he said, not turning around. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried a weight that made the air in the room feel thin. "We need to stop pretending." Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. "Pretending? Marcus, it's Christmas Eve. I have your gift. I thought we could—" "I don't want a gift," he cut her off, turning around. He took a sip of his scotch, grimacing slightly. "And I don't want this." He gestured vaguely at the room, the tree, and finally, at her. "I don't understand," Elena whispered. She shifted, her back aching from the pregnancy. "Is this about the gala last week?" "I apologized for leaving early, Marcus. My feet were swelling, and the doctor said, 'It's not about the gala, Elena. It's about the brand.'" Marcus walked over to the coffee table and picked up a thick manila envelope. He tossed it onto the sofa next to her. It landed with a heavy thud. "What is this?" "Divorce papers," Marcus said casually, as if he were ordering coffee. "My legal team drew them up this morning. I signed them an hour ago." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Elena stared at the envelope, her breath catching in her throat. "Divorce? But, Marcus, the baby. We're having a daughter in 2 months." Marcus let out a short, derisive laugh. He sat in the armchair opposite her, crossing his legs. "The baby. Right. See, that's part of the problem. When I married you, Elena, you were the quiet, sweet orphan girl. No baggage, no family drama. Just a pretty face to have on my arm. A blank slate." He leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "But now, you're emotional. You're needy. And frankly, this whole pregnancy look—" He looked her up and down with open disgust. "It doesn't fit the aesthetic I'm going for in the new year. I'm taking the company public in Q1. I need a power couple image, not whatever domestic mess this is." Elena felt tears prick her eyes, hot and stinging. "I'm your wife, not an accessory. I'm carrying your child." "And you'll be compensated for it," Marcus said, checking his Rolex. "The prenup is ironclad, as you know. You get a flat settlement of $50,000. But, considering the timing, I'm feeling generous. I'll throw in an extra 10 grand if you leave tonight without making a scene." "Leave?" Elena gasped, her voice cracking. "Tonight? It's Christmas Eve. It's 10 degrees outside. I have nowhere to go." Marcus stood up, his patience evaporating. "That's not entirely true. There are plenty of motels in Queens. And you're not an orphan anymore, are you? Didn't you say you found your long-lost father's address last year? Maybe go cry to him." "You know I never met him," she sobbed. "I don't even know if he's alive. I have no family, Marcus. You are my family." "Not anymore." He pulled his phone out of his pocket. "Security is already on the way up to escort you out. You can take your personal items, clothing and toiletries. The jewelry stays. The car stays." "You can't do this," she pleaded, standing up, her hands trembling. "Please, Marcus, just let me stay until the baby is born. The guest room. Anywhere. Don't throw us out on Christmas." Marcus looked at her with a chilling emptiness. There was no anger, which was almost worse. There was just nothing. "You're cluttering my space, Elena, and I have guests arriving in an hour. Jessica Vance is coming over." Elena froze. "Jessica, your PR consultant?" "She's a bit more than that now," Marcus smirked. "She understands the vision. She fits the life. Now pack your bag. You have 10 minutes before security drags you out." He turned his back on her and poured another drink, humming a Christmas carol under his breath. Elena stood there for a moment, the devastation washing over her like a physical blow. She looked at the man she had loved, the man she thought would be the father of her child. She realized then that he wasn't a man at all. He was a hollow shell painted in gold. She didn't scream. She didn't throw things. She wiped her face with the back of her hand, a sudden, cold resolve settling in her chest. She grabbed the divorce papers, not to sign, but to keep as evidence of his cruelty. She walked to the bedroom, packed a single duffel bag with her warmest sweaters and her prenatal vitamins, and walked back out. Marcus didn't even look up as the elevator doors closed between them. The lobby of the Obsidian Tower was a fortress of marble and gold. A massive 20-foot Christmas tree stood in the center, decorated with Swarovski crystals. It was beautiful, cold and uninviting, just like Marcus. Elena stepped out of the elevator, her heavy duffel bag straining her shoulder. The head of security, a man named Joe, who had always been kind to her, looked at the floor, unable to meet her eyes. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Thorne," Joe mumbled as he held the glass door open for her. Mr. Thorne gave strict instructions. "Your access card has been deactivated." "It's okay, Joe," Elena said, her voice hollow. "It's not your fault. Merry Christmas." She stepped out into the biting wind. The cold hit her instantly, cutting through her wool coat. The snow was falling harder now, thick white flakes that stuck to her eyelashes. Fifth Avenue was relatively quiet. Most people were already home with their families, drinking cocoa and opening presents. Elena walked 2 blocks, her boots crunching on the salted pavement. She had $60,000 promised in a settlement she hadn't received yet. In her bank account, she had maybe $200. Marcus had frozen the joint cards the moment he asked for the divorce. She stopped in front of a luxury department store, Bergdorf Goodman, staring at the window display. It showed a happy, mechanical family opening gifts. The irony made her stomach turn. "Spare a moment for the children," a deep, gravelly voice said. Elena turned. Standing near the entrance of the store, ringing a brass bell, was a Salvation Army Santa. But he didn't look like the usual volunteers. He was a mountain of a man, tall and broad-shouldered. His Santa suit was made of high-quality velvet, not cheap felt, and his beard, thick, white, and magnificent, looked real. He was standing next to a red kettle, but his eyes were fixed on Eleanor. They were blue, piercing, and strangely familiar. Eleanor felt a magnetic pull. She walked over, fumbling in her pocket. She pulled out a $20 bill, one of the last few she had. "I don't have much," she said, her voice trembling as she stuffed the bill into the kettle. "But I hope it helps someone." The Santa stopped ringing the bell. He looked at the bill, then up at her tear-stained face. He looked at her stomach. "You are generous for someone who looks like she just lost the world, child," the Santa said. His voice was warm, like a crackling fire. "Why are you out here in this storm? You should be home." Elena let out a bitter laugh that turned into a sob. "I don't have a home, not anymore. My husband, he decided he wanted a new life for Christmas." The Santa's eyes darkened. The twinkle vanished, replaced by a storm of its own. "He kicked you out? In this weather? While you are carrying a child?" "He's a powerful man," Elena whispered, looking back toward the obsidian tower, looming in the distance. "He said I don't fit his image." "Image?" the Santa scoffed. He reached into his red velvet coat and pulled out a thermos. "Here, hot chocolate. It's Swiss. Drink." Elena hesitated, but the cold was seeping into her bones. She took the thermos. "Thank you, I'm Elena." "I know. I mean, nice to meet you, Elena." The Santa corrected himself quickly. "I go by Nick. Just Nick." As Elena sipped the chocolate, which was rich and warming, a sleek black Bentley pulled up to the curb right in front of them. The window rolled down. It was Marcus, and in the passenger seat, looking glamorous in a white fur coat, was Jessica Vance. Marcus leaned out, a cruel smirk playing on his lips. "Well, look at this. You found your level, Elena. Hanging out with the beggars already?" Jessica giggled, covering her mouth. "Oh, Marcus, don't be mean. Maybe she's asking Santa for a new husband." Elena stiffened, gripping the thermos tight. She wanted to scream, but she was frozen with humiliation. The Santa, however, stepped forward. He moved with a speed and grace that belied his size. He walked right up to the Bentley's window. He didn't look like a jolly elf anymore. He looked like a titan. "You must be Marcus Thorne," the Santa said, his voice low and dangerous. Marcus sneered. "Get back, old man, or I'll have you arrested for harassment. Do you know who I am?" "I know exactly who you are," the Santa said. "You're a man who builds towers of glass and thinks they make him a king. But glass breaks, Marcus. It breaks very easily." Marcus laughed. "Is that a threat? From a guy in a costume?" "Elena, enjoy your night on the street. I'm going to the plaza for drinks." He rolled up the window and the Bentley sped off, spraying slush onto the sidewalk, narrowly missing Elena's boots. Elena burst into tears. "He's going to win. He always wins." The Santa turned back to her. He placed a heavy, gloved hand on her shoulder. It felt protective, solid. "No, Elena," he said softly. "He has already lost. He just doesn't know it yet." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a card. It wasn't a business card. It was a thick, cream-colored card with a gold embossed emblem of a lion. There was an address on it, a townhouse on the Upper East Side. "My shift is over," the Santa said, "and I happen to know that this house has plenty of empty rooms, a warm fire, and a housekeeper who makes excellent strudel. You are not sleeping in a motel tonight." "I can't," Elena shook her head. "I can't take it charity." "It's not charity," the Santa said, and for a second his voice cracked with emotion. "It's family. Trust me. Just for tonight." Elena looked at the card. The name on the gate would read Sterling, the same name she had been born with. But she didn't know that yet. She looked at the old man's kind eyes and felt, for the first time that night. A spark of hope. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay, Nick." The Santa smiled, pulled out a phone that looked far too expensive for a street charity worker, and dialed a number. "Alfred," he spoke into the phone. "Bring the car around, the Rolls. We have a VIP guest." The interior of the Rolls-Royce Phantom was a world away from the freezing New York slush. It smelled of aged leather and lavender. The heating was set to a perfect 72 degrees, instantly soothing Elena's shivering frame. Nick, or the man she knew as the Salvation Army Santa, sat across from her, having removed the fake beard to reveal a well-groomed silver goatee and a strong, square jawline that had aged with dignity. He poured a glass of sparkling water from a crystal decanter and handed it to her. "Alfred," the man said to the driver, his voice losing the jovial Santa affectation and returning to a commanding baritone. "Call Dr. Evans. Tell him to meet us at the residence. I want him to check on a pregnant woman. Possible hypothermia and stress." "Yes, Mr. Sterling," Alfred replied smoothly from the front seat. Elena froze, the glass halfway to her lips. "Sterling? Did he say—" "Mr. Sterling?" The man sighed, leaning back into the plush leather. He looked tired, the weight of years evident in his eyes. "My name is Arthur Sterling. I apologize for the deception, Elena. But sometimes disguises are the only way to see the world as it truly is. People lie to billionaires. They don't lie to street Santas." Elena's mind raced. Arthur Sterling was a name everyone in New York knew. He was the Titan of steel, a man who had built half the skyscrapers in Manhattan and owned shipping lines across the Atlantic. He was worth billions. And he had been ringing a bell on a street corner. "Why?" Elena asked, bewildered. "Why did you help me? Why bring me here?" Arthur looked at her, his blue eyes softening with a pain that looked decades old. "Because, child, you have your mother's nose, and her stubbornness." Before Elena could ask what he meant, the car glided through a massive wrought-iron gate on the Upper East Side. The townhouse was more of a palace, a 5-story limestone structure that radiated old money. Inside, the foyer was dominated by a double staircase and a crystal chandelier the size of a small car, but Elena's eyes were drawn immediately to a massive oil painting hanging above the fireplace in the grand salon. It was a portrait of a woman. She was young, beautiful, with cascading chestnut hair and eyes that sparkled with mischief. She was wearing a locket, a silver oval with a small sapphire in the center. Elena gasped, her hand flying to her throat. She pulled out a necklace from under her sweater. It was the identical locket. The one thing her mother had left her before she died in that car accident 20 years ago. "Her name was Sarah," Arthur said, his voice trembling as he stood behind Elena. "She was my daughter, my only child. She ran away 25 years ago, fell in love with a musician, a good man, but a poor one. I was arrogant back then. I told her if she chose him, she chose poverty. I cut her off." Tears streamed down Arthur's face. "I tried to find her a few years later. I hired investigators. They told me there had been a crash, that she and her husband were gone. They said there was a child, a girl, but the system had swallowed her up. I have spent every Christmas since then standing on that corner, ringing that bell, hoping that maybe, just maybe, karma would bring me a second chance." He turned to Elena, tears shining in his eyes. "When you walked up to my kettle, I saw her, and then I saw the locket." Elena was shaking. The story she had told herself, that she was unwanted, abandoned, shattered. She wasn't abandoned. She was lost. "Grandfather," she whispered, the word feeling foreign on her tongue. Arthur opened his arms and Eleanor collapsed into them. For the first time since her husband had thrown her out, she felt safe. She felt found. "You are home, Elena," Arthur whispered into her hair. "And no one will ever hurt you again. Especially not that insect." Marcus Thorne. That night, Elena didn't sleep in a motel. She slept in a canopy bed with Egyptian cotton sheets, but before she drifted off, Arthur sat by her bedside. "Rest now," he said. "Recover. Focus on the baby. But know this. Marcus believes he is a shark. He is about to learn that he is swimming in a tank with a kraken. Do not tell him where you are. Let him think you are destitute. Let him think he has won. The victory will make his fall so much sweeter." 3 weeks had passed since Christmas Eve. In the gleaming headquarters of Thorne Tech, Marcus Thorne was pacing his office like a caged tiger. The thud of his Italian leather shoes on the hardwood floor was the only sound in the room. Jessica Vance sat on his desk, filing her nails. She was wearing a dress that cost more than most people's cars, purchased with Marcus's corporate card. "Relax, babe," Jessica said, not looking up. "So the loan is delayed. It happens. The banks are just doing their due diligence for the IPO." "It's not just delayed, Jessica," Marcus snapped, loosening his tie. "It's stalled. Henderson at Chase has been dodging my calls for 3 days. And the zoning permit for the new server farm in Jersey, denied. This morning, without explanation." "Bureaucracy," Jessica shrugged. "Just bribe someone. Isn't that how this works?" "I tried," Marcus yelled, slamming his hand on the desk. "I sent a gift to the commissioner. It was returned, unopened. That never happens." Marcus walked to the window, looking out at the city he thought he owned. He felt a prickle on the back of his neck, a sensation of being watched. Since Christmas, everything had felt difficult. Deals that were sure things suddenly fell through. Suppliers suddenly had stock shortages. His PR team was working overtime to bury rumors that Thorne Tech was liquidity poor. His intercom buzzed. It was his secretary, her voice shaking. "Mr. Thorne, Mr. Henderson from the bank is on line 1. He says it's urgent." Marcus snatched the phone up. "Henderson, finally. Look, I need that 50 million released by Friday, or the IPO valuation takes a hit. What is the hold-up?" "Mr. Thorne," Henderson's voice was icy, devoid of the usual sycophantic warmth. "I'm afraid the loan committee has flagged your application. There are irregularities in your collateral." "Irregularities? I put up the Obsidian Tower. It's worth 200 million. "Not anymore," Henderson said. "It seems there's a lien on the land title, an old clause from the original sale of the bedrock rights. We missed it in the initial review, but the actual owner of the land has asserted their rights." "The actual owner?" Marcus felt cold sweat trickle down his back. "I own the land." "You own the building, Mr. Thorne. You lease the land. It's a 99-year lease, but the owner has invoked a moral turpitude clause in the contract. They claim the tenant, you, has engaged in behavior damaging to the reputation of the property." "Moral turpitude?" Marcus laughed, a high-pitched, hysterical sound. "What is this? The 1800s? Who is the owner?" "A holding company called Nemesis Trust," Henderson replied. "And because of this dispute, the bank is freezing your lines of credit, effective immediately. You have 48 hours to resolve the lien, or we call in the existing loans." The line went dead. Marcus stared at the phone. Nemesis Trust. He had never heard of them. "What is it?" Jessica asked, finally looking concerned. "Marcus, you look pale." "They froze the money," Marcus whispered. "If I don't fix this by Friday, we can't make payroll. The IPO will collapse. The stock will go to zero." "Well, fix it," Jessica snapped, hopping off the desk. I have a dress fitting for the gala on Saturday. You promised me this would be the event of the season. The gala. Marcus rubbed his temples. The Future of Tech Gala. He had invited the entire elite of New York. If he cancelled it, he would look weak. If he held it while bankrupt, he was a fraud. We hold the gala, Marcus said, his eyes hardening. I'll find a private investor. Someone who wants a piece of the pie before we go public. I'll sell a stake in the company if I have to. Good, Jessica said, grabbing her purse. I'm going to lunch. Don't stress, darling. You always win. You're Marcus Thorne. As she walked out, Marcus didn't see the love of his life. He saw a rat preparing to jump ship. Across town, in the library of the Sterling mansion, Arthur Sterling put down his phone. He was wearing a velvet smoking jacket, sitting by a roaring fire. He took the bait, Arthur said to the empty room. Elena was sitting in the corner armchair, reading a book on infant care. She looked healthier now. Her cheeks had colour, and the dark circles were gone. She was wearing a soft cashmere robe. He's going ahead with the gala? Elena asked. He has to. Arthur smiled grimly. His ego won't let him cancel. He thinks he can charm a shark into giving him money. He doesn't realize he's already bleeding in the water. He still doesn't know? He has no idea. He thinks Nemesis Trust is just some faceless corporation. He doesn't know Nemesis is the name of the Greek goddess of retribution. Arthur stood up and walked over to Eleanor. How are you feeling, my dear? Heavy, Eleanor smiled, rubbing her belly. She's kicking. I think she knows something is happening. She knows her grandfather is clearing the path for her, Arthur said, kissing Elena's forehead. By the way, have you decided on a name? I was thinking. Sarah, Elena said softly. After my mother. Arthur's eyes misted over. Sarah, it's perfect. Arthur, Elena said, her voice turning serious. I want to go to the gala. Arthur frowned. Elena, you're 8 months pregnant. It will be stressful. Marcus will be there. That woman will be there. I know, Elena said, a fire lighting behind her eyes that matched her grandfather's. But I need to see him. I need him to see me, not as the poor wife he threw away, but as a Sterling. I want to be there when you take him down. Arthur looked at her for a long moment. He saw the steel in her spine. She wasn't the victim anymore. Very well, Arthur nodded. But you won't just go. You will arrive. We need to get you a dress. And diamonds. Lots of diamonds. The week leading up to the gala was a blur of chaos for Marcus. He was burning through his personal savings to keep the lights on at the office. He fired 3 executives who asked too many questions about the finances. Jessica had spent $40,000 on earrings, and when he asked her to return them, she threw a vase at his head. He was sleeping 2 hours a night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the Santa from the street corner. Glass breaks very easily, the man had said. Stupid beggar, Marcus muttered to himself, popping a Xanax with a Scotch chaser. Superstitious nonsense. On the day of the gala, a massive snowstorm hit New York again. It was fitting. The city was white and cold, just like it had been the night he evicted Eleanor. He hadn't thought about her much, to be honest. He assumed she was in a shelter somewhere, or maybe back in whatever trailer park she came from. She was the past. Tonight was about the future. The venue was the grand ballroom at the Plaza Hotel. It was decked out in silver and blue, the colors of Thorne Tech. By 8 p.m., the room was full. Tech bros in hoodies and blazers mixed with old Wall Street money in tuxedos. Waiters circulated with champagne and caviar. Marcus stood at the entrance, a plastered smile on his face. Jessica was on his arm, looking stunning but annoyed. Where are the heavy hitters? She whispered. I don't see the Vanderbilts. I don't see the Rockefellers. "They're coming," Marcus hissed. "Just smile." But they weren't coming. RSVP after RSVP had cancelled last minute. The room was full of mid-level managers and hangers-on, not the whales Marcus needed to save his company. Suddenly, the room went quiet. The chatter died down, replaced by a murmur of awe and confusion. The double doors at the top of the grand staircase swung open. A man stood there. He was wearing a tuxedo that fit him like armor. He was older, with a silver goatee and broad shoulders. He radiated power so intense it was almost physical. It was Arthur Sterling, the Arthur Sterling, the man who hadn't been seen at a public social event in a decade. Marcus's jaw dropped. Arthur Sterling was the richest man in the state. If Marcus could get just 5 minutes with him, a photo op, a handshake, it would save the IPO. The stock would skyrocket just by association. "Oh my God," Jessica gasped, squeezing Marcus's arm. "That's Sterling. Go talk to him." Marcus straightened his tie, his heart pounding. "I'm going." But Arthur wasn't alone. Descending the stairs on his arm was a woman. She was heavily pregnant, moving with a regal grace that commanded the attention of every soul in the room. She was wearing a custom-made midnight blue velvet gown that draped over her baby bump elegantly, shimmering like the night sky. Around her neck was a diamond necklace that looked heavy enough to sink a ship. The sterling sapphires, legendary jewels not seen since the 1920s. Her hair was swept up in an intricate chignon, but her face... Marcus stopped dead in his tracks. The champagne glass slipped from his fingers and shattered on the floor. It was Eleanor, but it wasn't the Eleanor he knew, the meek, quiet girl in comfortable sweaters. This woman was a queen. Her chin was high, her eyes were clear and sharp, and she looked at the room not with fear, but with total command. That's your wife," Jessica screeched, her voice cutting through the silence. "What is she doing with Arthur Sterling?" The whisper ran through the crowd like wildfire. "Is that Marcus's ex? Why is she with Sterling? Is she his mistress?" Arthur and Elena reached the bottom of the stairs. The crowd parted for them like the Red Sea. Arthur led her straight toward Marcus. Marcus couldn't move. His brain was misfiring. "Elena!" he choked out. Arthur Sterling stepped forward, towering over Marcus. Up close, Marcus saw the blue eyes. The piercing, judging blue eyes. The memory hit him like a freight train. The street corner. The bell. The Santa. "I know exactly who you are." Marcus's face drained of all color. He looked from Arthur to the Santa-like beard, then back to Arthur. "You," Marcus whispered, his voice trembling. "You were at the store." "Good evening, Marcus," Arthur said, his voice booming enough for the nearby crowd to hear. "I believe you have met my daughter." The silence in the room was absolute. You could hear a pin drop. "Daughter?" Marcus stammered. No, she's an orphan. She has no family." "She was lost," Arthur corrected, his voice hard as steel. "But she is found, and she is a Sterling, which makes the child she is carrying, my granddaughter, the heir to the Sterling Empire." Jessica Vance let out a gasp of horror. She looked at Eleanor, then at Marcus, and realized instantly that she had bet on the wrong horse. Eleanor stepped forward. She looked Marcus in the eye. "Hello, Marcus. You said I didn't fit your image. You said you needed a power couple aesthetic." She gestured to the room, to the press photographers who were frantically snapping pictures of her and her billionaire father. "Is this powerful enough for you?" Elena asked softly. Marcus opened his mouth, but no words came out. He looked around. His investors were looking at him with disgust. His friends were snickering. "Mr. Sterling," Marcus tried to salvage the situation, sweating profusely. "Sir, please. There has been a misunderstanding. Elena and we're just going through a rough patch. Hormones, you know. We can work this out. For the family." "Family?" Arthur let out a laugh that chilled the room. "You threw your family into the snow on Christmas Eve, boy. You don't get to claim them now that you know what they are worth." Arthur reached into his tuxedo pocket and pulled out a document. "By the way," Arthur said casually, "I represent Nemesis Trust. We own the land under your tower. And as of this morning, we also purchased the majority of your outstanding debt from Chase Bank." Marcus felt his knees buckle. You bought my debt?" "I own you, Marcus," Arthur said, leaning in close, "and I am calling in the loan. In full. Tonight." Marcus fell to his knees. It wasn't a figure of speech. He physically collapsed to the floor in his expensive tuxedo, surrounded by the shattered glass of his champagne flute. "Please," Marcus begged, tears streaming down his face, oblivious to the cameras flashing. "Please don't destroy me." "I didn't destroy you," Elena said, looking down at him with pity, not hate. "You destroyed yourself. We're just here to sweep up the glass." Suddenly, Elena gasped. She grabbed Arthur's arm, her face twisting in pain. A gush of water hit the floor, mixing with the champagne. "Grandfather," she gasped. "The baby. It's time." The grand ballroom of the plaza had transformed from a scene of opulent celebration into a theater of panic. The music had stopped. The waiters were frozen with trays of melting ice, and the flashbulbs of the paparazzi went off like strobe lights, blinding everyone in the vicinity. "Clear the way," Arthur Sterling bellowed. His voice, usually calm and authoritative, cracked with the raw terror of a grandfather watching his legacy at risk. He scooped Eleanor up in his arms. Despite his age, the adrenaline of the moment gave him the strength of a man half his years. "Alfred, get the car, now!" Elena gripped the lapel of Arthur's tuxedo, her knuckles white. "It's too early," she gasped, sweat beading on her forehead despite the chill of the air conditioning. "It's too early, grandfather." "She's ready to meet the world, Elena. Just breathe," Arthur soothed her, rushing toward the exit. The crowd parted, not out of respect this time, but out of fear of the sheer intensity radiating from the billionaire. Marcus stood alone in the center of the room, surrounded by shattered glass and the ruins of his reputation. He took a step forward, his instinct to follow, to control the narrative, kicking in. "Elena, wait!" he shouted, stumbling slightly. "I'm the father. I have rights." He was cut off by a wall of black suits, Arthur's personal security detail. Ex-Mossad agents who didn't care about American liability laws formed a phalanx between Marcus and the exit. "Mr. Thorne," the lead agent said, his voice flat, "if you take one more step, you will be removed from the premises. Physically." "I'm her husband," Marcus screamed, his face turning a mottled red. "That is my child." "Not anymore," a sharp, feminine voice said from behind him. Marcus spun around. Jessica Vance was standing there, her fur coat already buttoned up. She was typing furiously on her phone. "Jessica," Marcus pleaded, reaching for her. "You have to help me spin this. Call the Times. Tell them Sterling is kidnapping my wife. We can twist this." Jessica looked up, and the look in her eyes was one of pure, unadulterated disgust. It wasn't the disgust of a lover scorned. It was the disgust of a parasite realizing the host was dead. "Spin it?" She laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "Marcus, look at Twitter. It's trending. Dash Thorne fraud. A Santa billionaire. You're done. The stock dropped 40% in after-hours trading in the last 10 minutes. By morning, Thorne Tech will be a penny stock." "We can fix it." Marcus grabbed her arm. "I just need—" "Don't touch me!" she shrieked, pulling away. "I'm not going down with you. I have a reputation. I'm deleting every photo of us from my Instagram. Consider this my resignation. And Marcus?" She paused, looking him up and down. "You owe me for the dress." She turned on her heel and marched out, the click-clack of her heels sounding like nails in a coffin. Marcus was left alone. The investors, men he had looked up to, men he had tried so hard to impress, were looking at him with open contempt. "Pathetic," he heard Charles Vanderbilt mutter as he walked past. Marcus sank into a chair, putting his head in his hands. The waiter approached him, not to offer a refill, but to hand him a bill. "Mr. Thorne," the waiter said stiffly, "the hotel manager requires payment for the event up front. The credit card on file was declined." Mount Sinai Hospital. The VIP wing. The scene in the delivery room was a stark contrast to the gala. It was quiet, focused, and filled with love. Arthur Sterling paced the hallway, his tuxedo jacket discarded, his shirt sleeves rolled up. He looked every minute of his age now, the exhaustion settling in. Inside the room, Elena was fighting the hardest battle of her life. The labor was fast and furious. "You're doing great, Elena," Dr. Evans said, monitoring the vitals. "The baby is small, but her heart rate is strong. One more push." "I can't," Elena sobbed, gripping the bed rails. "I'm alone. I can't do it alone." "You are not alone." Arthur burst into the room, ignoring the nurse's protest. He rushed to the bedside and took Elena's hand. His grip was rough, calloused, and warm. "I am here. Your mother is here in spirit. We are all here." Elena looked into her grandfather's blue eyes, the same eyes that had looked at her with kindness on a snowy street corner when she had nothing. She drew a breath that seemed to pull from the very bottom of her soul. She pushed. At 11:58 p.m., on the night of the gala, Sarah Noel Sterling entered the world. Her cry was loud, piercing, and indignant. It was the cry of a fighter. Dr. Evans cleaned the baby off and placed her on Eleanor's chest. She was tiny, barely 5 pounds, with a tuft of dark hair and, inevitably, those piercing, blue, sterling eyes. "She's perfect," Elena whispered, tears streaming down her face, washing away the pain of the last month. "Hi, Sarah. I'm your mama." Arthur looked down at the great-granddaughter he never thought he'd see. He reached out a trembling finger, and the baby's tiny hand wrapped around it. "Welcome to the family, Sarah," Arthur choked out. "You will never know cold. You will never know hunger. And you will never, ever know a man like your father." The following morning, 9. AIM. Marcus woke up on the sofa in his office at Thorne Tech. He had walked there from the plaza in the snow, too ashamed to call an Uber, too broke to call a limo. His neck was stiff. His mouth tasted like stale champagne and failure. He sat up, rubbing his eyes, hoping it was all a nightmare. But the red blinking light on his desk phone told him it was real. He pressed the button. "Mr. Thorne," the voice of his corporate attorney, Weinstein, filled the room. "I'm resigning. The SEC just raided the downtown server farm. Apparently, you used the company pension fund to shore up the liquidity for the gala. That's federal fraud, Marcus. I can't represent you." Marcus dropped the phone. The pension fund. He had borrowed from it, intending to pay it back after the IPO. How did they know? The door to his office burst open. It wasn't the police. It was worse. 3 men in dark grey suits walked in. They carried briefcases stamped with the logo of Nemesis Trust. "Marcus Thorne," the lead man said. "I am head of counsel for Arthur Sterling. We are here to execute the foreclosure on the Obsidian Tower." "You can't do that," Marcus stood up, swaying. "I have 30 days to cure the default." "Actually," the lawyer smiled, a shark-like baring of teeth. "Review your contract. Subsection 4. Paragraph B. The morality clause combined with the insolvency trigger allows for immediate seizure of assets if the debtor is under criminal investigation. The SEC announcement 10 minutes ago triggered it. The lawyer placed a document on the desk. This building belongs to Mr. Sterling now. You are trespassing. Security will escort you out. You have 5 minutes to collect personal effects. No electronics, no files. My house, Marcus whispered. My penthouse. Included in the asset seizure, the lawyer said. Your car has already been towed. Your personal accounts have been frozen by the DOJ. Marcus looked around the office. The glass walls, the Eames chair, the award for Innovator of the Year on the shelf. It was all smoke. Where am I supposed to go? Marcus asked, his voice cracking. I have nothing. The lawyer paused at the door. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, crumpled piece of paper. Mr. Sterling wanted you to have this. He placed it on the desk. Marcus picked it up. It was a flyer for a homeless shelter in the Bronx. Written on the back, in elegant fountain pen script, were the words, "Glass breaks very easily." 2 security guards, men Marcus had hired, men he had underpaid, walked in. "Let's go, boss," one of them smirked. "Don't make a scene." Marcus Thorne walked out of his tower with a cardboard box containing a stapler, a photo of himself, and a stress ball. As he stepped onto the sidewalk, the paparazzi were waiting. They didn't shout questions, they just laughed. 1 year later, New York City was once again dressed in its holiday best. The Rockefeller tree was lit, the skaters were circling the rink, and the air smelled of roasted chestnuts. But nowhere was the spirit of Christmas more alive than at the Sterling Foundation's annual winter ball. Held at the newly renovated Sterling Hall, formerly the Obsidian Tower, the event was the hottest ticket in the world. But it wasn't for profit. Every dollar raised was going to support single mothers and orphanages across the tri-state area. Elena Sterling stood on the balcony overlooking the ballroom. She looked breathtaking. She wore a gown of emerald green silk, and her face was radiant. She wasn't just beautiful, she was formidable. In the last year, she had taken a seat on the board of Sterling Industries. She had launched a new line of affordable, sustainable housing. She was no longer the girl who needed saving. She was the savior. "Mama!" A giggle interrupted her thoughts. Elena turned to see Sarah, now 1 year old, toddling across the floor in a red velvet dress. She was holding onto the finger of a very happy, very tired Arthur Sterling. "She's fast," Arthur laughed, picking the child up. "She has your sprint, Elena. I can barely keep up." "She's perfect," Elena smiled, taking her daughter. Sarah cooed, playing with the sapphire locket around Elena's neck. "Are you ready for the speech?" Arthur asked. "I am," Elena nodded. "But first I want to go downstairs, to the street." "The street?" Arthur raised an eyebrow. "Why?" I have a feeling," Elena said. "I need to close the circle." Arthur studied her for a moment, then nodded. "I'll get our coats." Outside, the snow was falling gently. The entrance to Sterling Hall was bustling with limousines and celebrities. Security was tight. Elena and Arthur walked out, flanked by guards. They didn't go to a limo. They walked to the corner of the block, the same corner where, a year ago, a desperate girl had met a Santa. There was a Salvation Army kettle there. But the person ringing the bell wasn't Arthur. It was a young volunteer, smiling and singing. Elena dropped $100 bill into the kettle. She looked across the street, toward the service entrance of the building, the place where the trash was taken out, where the catering trucks unloaded. A man was standing there. He was wearing a frantic, oversized catering uniform. He was shivering, smoking a cheap cigarette, trying to warm his hands over a grate vent. His face was gaunt, aged 10 years in one. His hair was thinning, and the arrogance that had once defined his jawline was replaced by a slack, defeated droop. It was Marcus. He was working for the catering company hired for the event. He was scraping plates. Elena watched him. She waited for the anger to rise. She waited for the desire to scream at him, to show him her diamonds, to laugh in his face. But nothing came. There was only a dull, distant pity. He looked so small. Marcus looked up. Through the falling snow and the steam from the vent, he locked eyes with her. He froze. The cigarette fell from his lips. He saw Elena, glowing, powerful, holding a baby that he knew, deep down, was his. He saw Arthur Sterling standing beside her like a guardian lion. Marcus took a step forward, his mouth opening. "Elena," he whispered. "Elena, please." He looked at the baby. "Is that—" He took another step, desperation clawing at his throat. He wanted to apologize. He wanted to beg. He wanted to claim that he had changed, even though he hadn't. He just wanted out of the cold. But before he could cross the street, a massive figure stepped in his path. It was Joe, the head of security, whom Marcus had forced to kick Elena out a year ago. Joe was now the personal bodyguard for Elena and Sarah. Joe didn't say a word. He just crossed his arms and stared at Marcus. The look said everything. "You are not welcome in this world anymore." Marcus stopped. He looked at Elena one last time. He saw no hate in her eyes. He saw something worse. He saw indifference. She had forgotten him. He was a bad memory, a ghost of a Christmas past. Elena turned to Arthur. "Let's go inside, grandfather. It's getting cold." "Yes, my dear," Arthur said. As they turned away, Arthur stopped. He looked back at Marcus, shivering in the slush. Arthur reached into his pocket. He didn't pull out a check. He didn't pull out a job offer. He pulled out a single, shiny gold coin. It was a chocolate coin, wrapped in gold foil, the kind they gave to children. Arthur tossed it across the street. It landed at Marcus's feet with a dull clink. "Merry Christmas, Marcus," Arthur called out. Elena and Arthur walked back into the warmth of the light and the music. The heavy doors closed behind them, sealing out the cold. Marcus stood alone in the snow. He bent down and picked up the chocolate coin. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely unwrap it. He took a bite. It was sweet, but in his mouth it tasted like ash. He looked up at the skyscraper he used to own, the family he used to have, and the life he had thrown away for an image. The wind picked up, blowing the flyer for the homeless shelter out of his back pocket and down the wet, grey street. Marcus turned his collar up, picked up a bag of trash, and disappeared into the alleyway. And that, my friends, is the ultimate karma. Marcus Thorne wanted a perfect image, so he threw away his pregnant wife. In the end, he got exactly the image he deserved, watching from the alleyway while the family he abandoned ruled the world. He traded a diamond for a stone, and now he has to carry that weight forever. If this story gave you chills, if you loved seeing Arthur Sterling protect his daughter, smash that like button. Let's get this to 10,000 likes. And tell me in the comments, do you think Marcus deserved forgiveness, or did he get off too easy? I read every comment. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss a story. Merry Christmas, and remember, be careful who you mistreat, because you never know who is watching.